it's Lee from colouringqueen.net and I hope you're doing well today. I am, of course, leaving it till the last minute to do my last picture for my Markova in March colour along. And so today I thought I would colour a postcard for that colour along, and it's from Klara Markova's I Believe in Fairies postcard pack. Now, I chose a postcard because clearly I have run out of time and I didn't think that I would actually finish a whole page from a colouring book. I actually did start a page, and you know what happens a lot of the time? I don't like it, and so then I don't finish it. So I actually started a page and I thought it was like way too red and pink, so I actually didn't finish it. And I'd done quite a lot of work on it, but I wasn't sure how to make it better, so I just abandoned it. So I'm colouring today with my Holbeins, and I've got to say I am loving using these. And I started using them as soon as they became available as open stock in Australia, because I've always put off using them because I knew I couldn't get replacements, especially since mail from Japan is sort of non-existent anymore in Australia and buying on Amazon, etc. So now that they're available open stock in Australia, I'm going to town and I'm using them quite a lot. So, and I've been loving using them, but I do find that, you know, sometimes they just don't have the colour combo that I like. Like the picture that I started to colour in Clara's book Tenderful Enchantments that I abandoned, it just didn't have the reds that I expected from my Prismacolors. So as I'm using them, I'm sort of getting to know, you know, well, if I want something like that's got the red combos that I really like with my Prismacolors, and I should perhaps use those for that. So it's good in a way because I'm getting to see how they sort of work in the way that I like to colour in. So that's been good. Now, just a little update for those that have been following my whole Titicaca experience that's been going on since January. I was meant to have a biopsy on Monday and actually got myself all geared up and I was all ready for it. I actually did some hypnosis prior to my appointment, and when I actually turned up to the imaging place that does the biopsy, the technician that I've had before, she couldn't believe it because I was so relaxed. She thought I'd actually taken a sedative. So that's how good the hypnosis was. And I was really lucky because David got rained off work. He's in construction, so when it rains they can't work, so he got sent home. So he was able to come to the appointment with me, so that worked out well. Anyway, I'm all geared up for the appointment and ready to have the needles and trying to conquer my fear of needles and everything. And the imaging place said they couldn't do what the breast surgeon asked because the issue from their point of view is at skin level, not breast level. And they said I needed a different sort of punch biopsy, so something that could be done by a doctor. So they rang up the breast surgeon, but of course she was in surgery and couldn't, you know, give them further information. And I was seen by their head doctor, and they did another ultrasound, so that's like 4 ultrasounds and 1 mammogram. And so now I'm going back to my doctor tomorrow to see if I can organise getting this punch test thing. So anyway, it's still not getting any better. The antibiotics really aren't helping, and I've now had 4 ultrasounds, so that's where I'm at. So anyway, I just hope it gets better soon. And I think with all the stress of it, I've just been craving sugar so bad, and because of the recent diabetes diagnosis, I've been trying to resist that, but you know, it's hard. It's really hard. All I want is a nice cinnamon scroll with lots of icing on it, not like the Cinnabons that you get in America and that we've now started getting in Australia because I find them too sweet, but something sort of like quarter strength of a Cinnabon if you're in the US, and just a normal, you know, cinnamon scroll in Australia with lots of real butter on it and a cup of coffee. That would be like a dream, but at the moment my diabetes levels are just too high to even have a half of one, so that's not going to happen. But I can dream about it, I guess. And for those that follow Buddy on Insta, and you know that he hasn't been well, he's had quite a lot of seizures. He's actually taken a little bit of time to get over it, and so he's getting there. He's getting better at walking and going up the stairs, and from last night or the night before, he's actually started remembering that he likes to sleep on the couch and that he likes to sleep in our bed. Even if we're in there, he likes to push us out so he can have the whole bed. So he started to get a lot of his memory back, which is good, because originally he only sort of remembered his name, and he wasn't really getting memory of like normal commands like sit and, you know, come and stuff like that. So it's good to see that he's getting better, and now that we've got some recovery medicine for him so that he doesn't have to go through that horrific experience again. So anyway, that's my life to date. And I have just posted my Alice in April colour along. So that is going to be anything from Alice in Wonderland, so the Cheshire Cat or the Queen, or of course the White Rabbit, or hey, even Alice. So if you want to join in that one, April is my birthday month, and as most people know, I just love Alice in Wonderland. And I thought, what better way to spend your birthday than looking at lots and lots of beautiful pictures from my favourite fairy tale. And I love a bit of escapism, like looking at fairy tales. But one of my biggest guilty pleasures, I think, is imagining what it would be like to win lotto. And I don't know if any of you guys ever feel that way, if you ever think, geez, if I won X amount of money, you know, how would my life change and what would I do? And, you know, I daydream about it sometimes, especially when times are tough, and I think about what I'd buy, maybe some more Holbeins, and maybe that great colouring book that I wanted from Korea that I wasn't able to buy, or maybe Serene, or, you know, a bigger house, or, you know, just all the normal sorts of things. I don't know whether you guys do it or not. Sometimes I think really weird things about lotto wins, like, you know, building like a homeless shelter for people that don't have anywhere to spend the night, and, you know, and then sometimes I'm a lot more selfish and think of, you know, colouring books and art supplies and things like that. So, but it's good fun sometimes just to escape, and most people enjoy a bit of escapism from time to time. I know I definitely would buy a single level house, as it would be so much easier when Buddy's not feeling the best and he can avoid the stairs. Plus, I'm so over going up and down stairs all the time to the laundry. So that would definitely be something on my lotto list. But today's case is all about winning lotto, so not daydreaming about it, but actually winning it. And it takes place in the USA. So in 2002, the Multi-State Lottery Association in the US introduced a game called Hot Lotto in a number of states of the USA, not all of them. And the game had a lot of things that made it appealing. Like the jackpot was always $1 million, and you got the actual amount of the jackpot as the tax was paid by the Lottery Association. And you could play it twice a week, so if you didn't win it one day, you could have a crack on the next day. And if you were lucky enough to actually win the jackpot, you could choose to have either a lump sum payment and go crazy shopping, or hopefully and give some away or do whatever you fancy. Or you could have it as an annuity where you got regular payments throughout your life. So either way, good stuff. And it's a bit like Powerball in Australia, and I know you have Powerball in America, but I'm not too sure how that one works. But Powerball in Australia, you basically pick 5 numbers from for the Hot Lotto, it works like Powerball in Australia. You basically have to pick 5 numbers from the range of 1 to 47 and a hot ball number ranging from 1 to 19. So pretty hard. And like all lottery games, the odds of winning are just huge. To get the correct 5 numbers and the hot ball, the odds were 1 in 29,144,841. So that's hard. That's really hard. So means most people dream about it rather than winning it. But in December of 2010, 8 years after this Hot Lotto had started, the jackpot was 14.3 million. And can you imagine how many people would have been dreaming of winning the jackpot in time for Christmas? I mean, imagine the Christmas you could have and the things that you could buy for your family and the big feasts that you could have and the charitable donations that you could make. And maybe, you would even start the new year without a job. You could retire. So one lucky player bought a ticket at Des Moines gas station in Iowa and they actually won the jackpot. $14.3 million. Imagine that. But the odd thing was that no one came forward immediately to claim the jackpot. Now, sometimes people just can't process that they've won that amount of money and they want to seek financial advice before getting it into their hot little hands. Or maybe they didn't realise they'd won as they don't check their tickets regularly. Or even worse, maybe they mislaid the ticket and they were desperately running around the house trying to find it. But with the Hot Lotto, if you didn't claim it within 60 days, then you'd automatically receive it as an annuity rather than that lump sum payment. Well, the 60 days passed and still no one came forward to claim the winnings. And in Iowa, where the ticket was sold, the winner had 365 days to claim the prize. And yet months went by and no one legitimately came forward to claim the money. Of course, there were people saying that was their usual numbers and they'd lost the ticket, but they were entitled to it. But none of these people could actually satisfy the identity requirements to claim the prize. And one of those things was providing the serial number of the ticket and also proof of your identity. So time went by, no one claimed it, and then just in the nick of time, in November 2011, before the deadline, a lawyer called Philip Johnson attempted to claim the winnings. Now, he was able to provide the serial number on the ticket, but he was unable to answer any other security questions. So ultimately, the Lottery Association denied his claim. Now, he didn't give up, and who would for 14 million bucks? So on the 6th of December, he had another crack at trying to claim the winnings on behalf of the winner, which was presumably his client, who wished to be anonymous. And this winner had set up a trust in Belize called Hexam Investments. But the trust couldn't be identified to the public, and in accordance with the lottery regulations, the claim was again turned down. It had to be identifiable, and a trust is just an entity, it's a thing. It can't go and buy a lottery ticket. Someone has to do that on its behalf. So just before the claim period was due to expire on the 29th of December 2011, a new law firm entered the scene and they attempted to claim the jackpot. Now, this was a local Des Moines firm and they were able to provide the actual ticket signed by Hexam Investments and a New York lawyer called Crawford Shaw. And strangely though, they'd misspelled their client's name, Hexam Investments. So that typo, spelling mistake, that caused them to lose the claim. They weren't giving up though, and Crawford Shaw met up with the lottery board. And the lottery board wanted details of all individuals and entities who'd ever been in possession of the ticket. Now, he refused to do this, and he actually withdrew the claim. Now, think about it. There's over 14 million bucks at issue. Lawyers don't work for free. This is really odd. So, first of all, the ownership of the ticket seemed really sus, with lawyers and different entities involved. And then they decided to walk away from $14 million. Like, who does that? Clearly, it would only be if 14 million is not important to you, or if it's worth more to you than the money is worth to proceed. I can't think of any other reason why you would walk away at this stage of the case. But if you can, let me know in the comments, because I'm curious as to why you would. And to me, it's only if you've got 200 million and 14 million's cappuccino money, or that the risk of getting the 14 million is worth more to you than the 14 million. Anyway, the lottery board thought like me, and they thought that it was really odd. And so they decided to investigate why no one had claimed the jackpot, which, is really good of them, because otherwise you would think that they'd just go, oh, well, we've got extra money in the kitty, we won't worry about it. But they put their thinking caps on and thought, this is really strange. What is the reason why? Because this could affect the association or their security. You never really know. So their first stop was to obtain the CCTV footage of when the ticket was purchased. And they actually got that from the Des Moines gas station. And they spent oodles of time going through it and checking the license plates and analysing the voice of the man buying the ticket on the footage. And then they also released camera stills of that footage in 2014, hoping that someone could identify the mystery buyer. Now, in the footage, he's a stocky man and he's wearing a hoodie, he's kind of got his head down, and he's a white man. And it wasn't long before they actually received a tip that the man in the camera footage looked and sounded like a man that the tipster knew well, and he'd actually worked with him. But the tipster wasn't the only one that recognised the lottery buyer. A number of his other work colleagues recognised him too, particularly his voice. And one colleague just couldn't believe it, and he actually went to the gas station to try and disprove that it was his workmate, and he measured up shelving that was in the camera still so he could get an idea of the height and the build of the guy buying the lottery ticket, to see whether it matched his colleague and the physical description given of him. And he was hoping to disprove this, but it actually proved that it was the same guy in his mind anyway. And the guy hadn't died, so that wasn't a reason why he hadn't claimed, and he hadn't been, in an accident and in a coma or anything like that. He was still working, and these colleagues of his were still identifying him as the guy buying the lottery ticket. And he was identified by a number of people, and they all said it was Eddie Tipton. Now, this is when the investigation really took a turn. Eddie was actually known to the Lottery Association because he actually was the head of IT security for the association in Iowa. Now, as a lottery employee, he actually wasn't able to participate in lottery draws. And this could explain why he tried to hide his identity through a number of different lawyers representing him. But Eddie, when asked about it, he said it wasn't him. He denied being in the footage, and he actually said that he was visiting family in Texas that day, so it couldn't have been him. But they didn't give up and they didn't accept his word for it. They dug deeper and they found he'd actually been in Des Moines that day as well, according to his phone and bank records. And they even dug into his social media and they found a link between one of the lawyers initially involved and Eddie. And Philip Johnson was that lawyer, and he was a connection of Eddie's on LinkedIn and had endorsed his skills on that platform. So it was getting a little bit more interesting. But the Lottery Association still wasn't going to let go of this because they wondered if it was sheer luck that Eddie's numbers had come up, or was it something more? Now, this is our crime show, so I guess you know it's something more. So initially, Eddie denied having influenced the outcome of the lottery, but the lottery officials were incredibly suspicious because Eddie's job was being in charge of providing random numbers for computers in the lottery draws. And although they didn't know the how and why of it, they were convinced that Eddie had somehow rigged the Hot Lotto. And it was enough that he was an employee, so he was arrested and charged with 2 felony counts of fraud. Obviously, the Lottery Association wanted to know how Eddie did it because there was a worry that someone else could rig the lottery the same way, or maybe there was a problem with their own security or within their system, like arresting him would not cure that. And they actually offered Eddie a plea deal if he'd tell the investigators how he did it, but he refused to give them any information whatsoever. So anyway, the trial began in July of 2015, and at this stage the prosecution was still lacking any sort of evidence of how this crime that they were prosecuting was actually committed. They could connect the dots and link all the facts into a convincing argument, like showing him buying the ticket and that he was an employee, but ultimately Eddie just refused to help. But still, well, the court connected the dots as well, and they were ultimately successful in proving fraud, even without the nuts and bolts of how the crimes were actually committed. And he was sentenced to 10 years and let out on a bond pending an appeal. But that's not where the story ends. After the trial ended, the Lottery Association received another phone call advising them that Eddie Tipton's brother, Tommy Tipton, which sounds so cute, had also been a lottery lucky duck and had actually won over $500,000 about 10 years previously in 2005. Now, this wasn't in Iowa, but in Colorado. Now, there was a few oddities about this win, but they were all legal. He'd first tried to get a friend to claim the money on his behalf. Then he'd actually gone to a fireworks dealer with $500,000 in cash of consecutively marked bills to try and launder the money. And when this was investigated by the FBI, he said that he didn't want his wife to know about his winnings. And it was quite weird, but there was nothing illegal about it, as the money had been obtained from a legal, genuine lottery win, so there was actually no money laundering. So the investigation just closed down. Now, having a friend try and claim the money and 2 brothers that win the lottery was enough to make the Lottery Association want to dive in further, and they were not letting this go. And as they investigated winners throughout the different states where the hot ball was in operation, they began to notice some connections to Eddie Tipton. First, Roger Rhodes. He was a connection to Eddie's on LinkedIn, and he was also a connection between the lawyer Philip Johnson, who'd won the lottery in December 2010 in Wisconsin. So they were both connected in a social media aspect. Then they found another lottery winner, this time in Oklahoma, the guy called Kyle Con, and yes, Con, he won over $1 million in the lottery in November 2011. And when they checked the details against Eddie Tipton's phone records, it turns out the two had chit-chatted on the phone. So, like, Eddie has family that wins the lottery, his lawyer wins the lottery, and, his mate wins the lottery. Then they found even more. They found 2 more winners who were in Kansas. And they'd won the same day that Eddie had won in Iowa. And their phone numbers were in Eddie's phone as contacts. One of them had actually been a woman that Eddie had been dating for a bit. So time went by and the investigators had made connections to Eddie, but they still didn't know how he'd actually rigged the lottery. I mean, he'd already been sentenced. In reality, the prosecution and the investigators could have just given up and said, hey, we did our best and he's already doing time. But they didn't. They actually filed further charges against Eddie in October 2015 in relation to his brother's win and the win by the lawyer Robert Rhodes. It wasn't until January in 2016 that Assistant Attorney General Rob Sand received some information from his office that enabled him to crack what Eddie had done. And he was able to crack the code. And it was the literal code in HTML that Eddie had inserted into the random number generator. What had happened was they were able to look at the rootkit, or I'm not quite sure of the technical term, of how the numbers were actually generated for the lottery wins. And when they went into that code, they noticed some code that was a bit sus. It wasn't meant to be there, and it was written in a coding language called HTML. And Rob Sand, the assistant AG, had dabbled in a bit of HTML, maybe when he was at college, but he had a working knowledge. And when he got this piece of information in the office, he was able to quickly read and decipher it. And he knew that what he was looking at was the code that was designed to produce basically a winning set of numbers from a limited combination of numbers. So you know how I said like that you had to have 5 numbers from 1 to 47 and 1 from the 1 to 19. This code sort of produced a combination that could only be limited, like 1 to 5 or something like that. And it wasn't obvious because the code had been created that it could only be used on Wednesday or Saturday nights and only 3 nights of the year, close to things like Memorial Day, Thanksgiving or Christmas. And it's believed that those times were chosen so they would give Eddie a valid reason because of the holiday breaks to be out of the office and he could buy tickets or get friends to buy tickets or whatever. And he didn't want to arouse suspicion and draw attention to the system, so he only implemented it basically a couple of times a year. And then he also shared those likely numbers to win the jackpot with his family and friends. Now in 2016 there was a bit more litigation regarding the lotto win by Eddie Tipton. The Lottery Association were actually sued by Larry Dawson, and he'd won $6 million in the Hot Lotto months after Eddie, and he argued that he should have received $16 million because the jackpot won by Eddie was illegal and the draw should have been reset, meaning by the time he won it, it would have jackpotted to $16 million. Now, he didn't recover that extra $10 million, but he did receive $1.5 from the Lottery Association, and they'd actually argued that no one knows what would have happened and it's kind of impossible to rewrite history, but they settled with him for $1.5 million, so he ended up getting $7.5 million less his lawyer's fees, And by this time, Robert Rhodes, the lawyer, he'd decided to cut his losses and work for the prosecution. So the prosecution now had a far stronger case, and even though Eddie had already been convicted, they still wanted to go further. So Robert Rhodes ended up pleading guilty in 2017 to fraud, and he agreed to testify against Eddie and his brother Tommy. He was put under house arrest, and he also had to pay over $400,000 as restitution. So again, the prosecutors went to Eddie Tipton, and this time they told him they've got the goods. They had the evidence, and once again they asked him, how did he do it? Because there were cameras where he was working, but sometimes those cameras didn't work. They had technical difficulties, and they really wanted to know how he actually did it without his other colleagues noticing, without the cameras, and without the security that the Lottery Association, has. And this time he said that he would tell, and he basically told them that initially he tried the random numbers, his code, to just see if he could get away with it. And when he did it some more. And then he decided that he'd help out some of his friends. So the nuts and bolts of it haven't been publicly disclosed, other than that HTML code that I was talking about before, because of obvious reasons, and the Lottery Association, tightened all their security, etc., on the back of this case. And Eddie and his brother Tommy, they ultimately admitted to defrauding nearly $24 million. And Eddie ended up with a 25-year sentence, and his brother Tommy with just 75 days. And as part of that, they also needed to agree to restitution so that the money gets repaid. And that was only basically a few million, because a lot of that money had already been disposed of and spent. And they also had to agree that they wouldn't start legal proceedings in order to avoid land that they held in Texas to be seized by the government. So they agreed that they wouldn't sue on that. But Eddie Tipton did sue the state of Iowa in January of 2020 on a different basis, on the basis that he was actually pressured into pleading guilty to crimes and he denied committing them. Now, this was dismissed in November of 2021, so basically, nice try, it didn't work. And Eddie ended up serving just 5 years of his 25-year sentence after he pled guilty to rigging the lotteries in Iowa and other states. And in January of this year, he was released and basically in the custody of Texas. So, I don't know what Eddie's going to do, if he's going to play the lottery and try and make up some bucks, or what his life is going to be like. But it was only a couple of months ago that he was released, and he only ended up serving 5 years. So I guess it was good while it lasted. But yeah, certainly a lovely case of fraud. And I really do have to wonder if they did actually track down everyone that might have got the hot tips on which numbers to pick and which lottery tickets to put your lotto on. I don't know. I would always be worried that I would get caught, and I'd be looking over my shoulder all the time and terrified that I would get caught. But apparently Eddie, he built a big, beautiful house. It had like 2 basements and like a racket court, and it was like a huge mansion. And people from his work did wonder how he paid for it, and I guess they know how. But yeah, so it's funny though, because most people that steal money, like, they tend to do it because they've got gambling debts or they're in need or something like that. But he just seemed to want to do it to see if he could, and then I guess he got greedy and wanted to share the love around with other people. and also greedy in sort of building a house that was far beyond the income that he had, like the means that he had. So I guess, you know, he did have a bit of show pony in him as well, but I don't know, I just can't imagine, you know, doing that over that span of time to your employer. But, you know, what would we have to talk about here if these people didn't do these things? I don't know. But ending on a happy note, if you won Lotto, what would be something that you would do? I know that I would, you know, if it wasn't 20 bucks, if it was a substantial amount, I'd certainly be looking at buying a single level house. But when I think of winning Lotto, I always think how nice it would be to do something for other people. Like, you know, even if you just had like some supermarket gift cards that you could give to people, like when they're struggling to buy their groceries or something like that. But I'd like to do something that, you know, you could manage to do over a long period of time, not like have the money and then, you know, immediately get rid of it because you give it to so many people type thing. I'd much prefer to do something that was like a little bit over a period of time. I'd certainly like to give to charities, but, you know, not in a big lump sum, but just like a little bit every month. But yeah, I'd love to know what you guys would like to do. And of course, I obviously will be buying a colouring book, you know, if that happened. If I was to win a big amount in Lotto, I would treat myself to a nice Korean or Japanese colouring book, definitely. And definitely get something for Millie and Buddy and David, and the single level house, and yeah, something ongoing or something where you could, you know, help a lot of people in a long period of time. That would be something that would interest me. But I'd love to hear what you guys would do. Now, I finished up the postcard. I had to do some of it offline. And what I do normally is I just do one layer of colour here while I'm talking to you, and I do the second layer of colour offline. Even though I'm right-handed, having my left hand in the mitten does sort of make me feel uncomfortable colouring on camera, and it's a lot easier for me to do that second layer offline. So that's what I did. And like normal, often I'll put on too much colour, and so I'll erase some as well. And so that's what I did with the background. I put on too much colour and I erased it. And with a lot of the white on the mushrooms, I'd actually coloured over the little white spots. So I put some posca pen on those to bring back the white look, because I'm just not a neat colorist like some of you are. I'm just like a hot mess. So anyway, that's it from me. I hope you all have a good day and a wonderful rest of the week. And if you want to join for the Alice in April colour along, love to see your pictures on Instagram, and I'll be digging out my books and trying to find some Alice in Wonderland pictures to colour in. Thinking of the Cheshire Cat and maybe Alice, I don't know, we'll see how we go. And I might switch up and change pencils. I've really loved colouring with my Holbeins this month, but you know, maybe I colour with something else. We'll see. It's nearly April now, so I better make up my mind quick. Anyway, that's it from me until next time. Oh, and before I forget, if you're following my new true crime channel, I'm actually taking a couple of weeks off from that. David convinced me basically to rebrand the whole thing and redo it, and I've taken that on board, and it's just taking me a little while to reset and get all the names and blah 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 that goes into putting up a new channel and whatnot. So definitely we'll be back, but it won't be this week, and you know, I don't think it'll be next week either, to be honest. David is taking a bigger part in helping me with this, and he's been wanting to learn the graphics and stuff, so I don't want to hassle him because he already does so much. So yeah, we'll see how we go with that, and maybe a week or two. But anyway, it is all happening, and I do have I've been talking to one of the victims that I've already covered. I've been talking to the mother quite extensively, so there'll be a big update on one of those cases later on in the year. We're looking at June, so for that, so that'll be something to look forward to there. But yeah, I haven't disappeared on that. I'm not abandoning it, just rebranding it. So that's it from me. Until next time, stay safe and happy colouring.